Chinese President Xi Jinping has promised $50 billion in support for Africa over 3 years as he addressed the continent's leaders in a speech in Beijing. Our Chief North Asia correspondent Stephen Engle joins us now from the event. So, Stephen, talk us through his comments. What stood out?
Well, it shows his commitment, continued commitment to the African continent. In fact, if you didn't believe it, look at the China Daily this morning. Essentially, all 12 pages of the main section of the newspaper are all about, guess what? The Forum of Cooperation between China and Africa and all of the policies that Xi Jinping has just laid out in his I guess you could call it the keynote address, welcoming address to this FOCAC meeting, the 9th such gathering of African leaders, more than 50 leaders of African nations here in the Chinese capital, listening to Xi Jinping today, as you see some footage here. The entire city bedecked in, obviously, Chinese flags, but also African flags as well. Xi elevating ties in his speech with African nations to a strategic level. There's no doubt that Xi Jinping has seen cooperation with the Global South and African nations in particular as very strategic, but now officially it is on strategic level. He's going to give essentially about 51 or 50.7 billion US dollars in financial support, either including or additional 30 billion US dollars line of credit to African nations over the next 3 years. Also, very interestingly, in a continent that some say the West has essentially neglected for decades, Xi Jinping is offering up about 141 million US dollars, a billion yuan in military assistance that would include helping train about 6,000 military personnel on the continent. We don't know which countries, and also another 1,000 police officers and law enforcement agents. She says China strives to create at least 1 million jobs in Africa and is encouraging Chinese companies to invest in particular the pharma industry in Africa and is ready to help Africa grow its green growth engine. That's a point of contention, obviously, as those in the West who have slapped tariffs on Chinese EVs upwards of 100%. They see China needing an export market for its excess and overcapacity of industrial products like EVs and batteries. And I guess Xi Jinping sees a market, obviously a continued market, in Africa. Now, going the other way, not to Africa, but from Africa to China, Xi says China will give 33 African nations, again, not named, but he essentially said countries deemed as developed economies, going to give them zero tariff benefits. So their exports and their imports into China will not be tariffed. They'll be basically zero. And says China is willing to expand market opening to African countries. Again, as most of these speeches are, short on specifics and broad brushstrokes. But again, it was a positive message from Xi Jinping to those in the audience at the Great Hall of the People.